like to introduce our speaker, Miss Janet Kelly, who is a rock star in this space. Many of you may know Janet from various different engagements, organizations. I see Reba smiling. I know she's a huge fan. And from the work that Janet does, especially with transition age youth experiencing experiencing and or at risk of experiencing homelessness. Janet has been with various organizations and for the past few decades has been with Sanctuary of Hope, an organization that she has founded and continues to lead. So without any further ado, Janet, I'm going to pass it to you. Thank you so much for joining us as our presenter.
Great, thank you. And before I begin, I want to say thank you to everyone who's here to learn more about Sanctuary of Hope, but who's also been with Sanctuary of Hope for the past 14 years. I probably never would have thought in 14 years that the organization would have grown or have expanded to being not only a countywide organization, but an organization that is connected nationally as well as internationally. And whether you've shown up to events for our young people to support them and their efforts, I want to say thank you. If you were there at the beginning of the founding to where, y'all came together to talk about being a response, an equity response for young people in South LA, thank you. And that includes MRT, thank you. And thank you to those of you who have late in the midnight hour when crises have come up and I've needed to make a call to try to help come to a resolution. I want to say thank you because I just think it's just very important to do that, because what that really demonstrates is not only the strength of the village, but that we're all in this together. So just very briefly about Sanctuary of Hope, who we are and what we do. We are a youth development, human services, and leadership development organization. There's 4 approaches that guide our work, which is prevention, stabilization, activism, and advocacy. We're countywide. We have 4 locations within the county's region, one being in South Los Angeles off of 10th and Adams, and Hawthorne that serves the South Bay off of 132nd and Hawthorne Boulevard, in Compton, inside the Center for Sustainable Communities, if those of you are familiar with NHS and Lori Gay. And then, of course, in Antelope Valley, where we've been, and we're celebrating a whole year of providing youth development, human services, and leadership development services in the city of Lancaster. We serve roughly about 1,100 young people a year who come to us in some form of crisis or in need of leadership development. And when I say crisis, it could be an economic crisis, a housing crisis, a family crisis, education crisis. And our goal is really to use that youth-centered positive youth development multi-pronged approach lens to help young people to kind of address what those issues and problems are and work towards sustainable stabilization activities for their growth, their overall stabilization. It's really geared towards economic independence. It's geared towards excellence. And I always tell people, you could click your heels 3 times and say there is no place like Sanctuary of Hope, because there is absolutely no place like Sanctuary of Hope. I mean, we've designed a program that is culturally not only competent, but culturally relevant. It's culturally connecting, it's culturally affirming, it's culturally embracing, it's culturally stewarding, and it's all centered around cultural excellence. And so a lot of things guide our approaches, but it's really whatever it takes to help a young person and not only that young person, but their family stabilized. So when we think about, well, what does that look like, right? So for us at Sanctuary of Hope, it looks like life coaching. It looks like therapy. It looks like family strengthening and support. It looks like education support. It looks like workforce development and workforce readiness. It looks like financial literacy. It looks like juvenile justice prevention and diversion, because we serve a lot of young people between the ages of 16 and 17 who are impacted by the justice system. And we work really hard and concentrated to ensure that they will not have another contact with the justice system. But it also looks like our leadership development. It looks like travel to 4 different continents on this earth. It also looks like the level of exposure and connection that we create for young people so that they have the skills to be not only well-rounded, but understand that they are global citizens. So in this picture, you might see this picture that I have in back of me. It's very interesting. When I say there is no place like Sanctuary of Hope, there's literally no place like Sanctuary of Hope. We have young people in Washington, D.C. right now who are a part of the Equity Weekend and Equity March. They are participating as ambassadors and marshals for the event and for the day. And today they closed out a session, a youth-centered session on civic engagement and electoral power. And so when I say that our work is far beyond kind of what we do here, it's what we do even outside of the county. So to circle back to how does this kind of translate to work around homelessness? And I will say it translates in many ways, and it does so differently at Sanctuary of Hope because we use language that is culturally appropriate and accepting to young people. So we don't use the word homeless. We use words like economic or housing insecure. Because when we ask them about the housing crisis that we in, we always ask them, well, when you say that you are in a housing crisis, you're saying that you're economically insecure or housing insecure, what does that look like? And sometimes it looks like, hey, I slept on my aunt's couch today. She has Section 8. I can't be there, but tomorrow I'm going to be at Fred's house. And at Fred's house, I know that I have a night. But then after Fred's house, I got to make sure that this car that we know that we can rent out for the night to sleep, it's going to be available that night. So my housing is not stable because I don't have a fixed nighttime resident. Our definition of a housing crisis is very broad. We normally, for us, use the educational and HHS definition, mainly because it's more connecting and attributable to how youth will find themselves in a crisis. A lot of times it's very family-centered. We are a part of what's called the Safe Line, the National Safe Line Network, where if young people have or are running away or fleeing from home, they could connect with us. We could connect them with a broader network that's among the National Safe Line to ensure that they're in a safe place, they're safely housed until that we could reconnect them with with either family that they identify or an adult that will have their best interests at heart. So the work that we do with young people connects to young people who run away from home. It connects to young people who are either child welfare or justice impacted. When you hear the language that I use, it's more youth-centered. Child welfare, justice impacted, housing, economic secure, domestic violence, and survivors. young people who have histories of continuing education, LGBTQIA plus or S2 plus, and then young people who are just generally impacted by poverty. And so our goal as a part of this whole framework of housing stability is really to ensure, one, that young people have permanent connections. And when I use the term permanent connections, it means that they have people outside of SOH, as well as a social network, they have social capital to rely on in the event of a crisis, that they have the tools to be successful and to be economically independent, which is what our leadership development work guides for our programs. And then three, of course, that they are a contributing part of that through their own activism. And so as a part of, when I say their own activism, one other aspect of the work or connection or tentacle of SOH is our Young Adult Action Board and our Young Adult Action Leadership that shepherds a lot of the policy, advocacy, and activism work that you may have encountered them with here within the county, but also across the nation. And so pivoting back to kind of the work on, again, a work around the housing crisis and how we ensure that they're connected. We have approximately 50 beds, whether it's transitional or through our bridge interim housing that houses young people. We also are one of the time-limited subsidy providers, but we also receive funding directly from the state of California and Department of Health and Human Services to provide direct boots on the ground intervention work, because majority of the young people, by design of our current systems, especially our CES systems, are more than likely not going to qualify. And so having just a broad base of additional resources allows us to help those young people to become stable. But I can tell you this, just some interesting fun facts about Sanctuary of Hope. And this is something that just even came to mind this week. On average, from our transitional housing programs, our young people are leaving with an average of $11,000. The highest earner or saver in our program left with $24,272. And although we worked really hard for her to become an own homeowner, and that wasn't her path, she was still able to stabilize, move to her community of choice, have a real good paying job with the county and as a barista at the same time. And she's self-sustaining. We have had young people who have been featured on the media, Good Morning America, whether their stories were centered around reentry, or their stories were centered around hope and progress. But even this week, I don't know if any of you saw or read the article in The Wave. Just this week, we had a short article or piece where we did a partnership with Reverend Shane Harris around closing the disparities of young people or Black youth within the child welfare system. So the work that we're doing is really, again, centered on bolstering the resilience of young people. Because when they come through the door, they're pretty much resilient. I can tell you, if you can manage living on the street, if you can figure out how to rent a car, you can learn how to sleep on top of abandoned building, you could create goods that you sell on the street to help sustain, to pay for your means of food, as well as if you're able to go to school and you can manage sleeping on the campus wherever that you can, or find other means to maintain in order to finish college or to finish high school, that's resilient. Our role is really, how do we bolster that? So I often get asked the question, so what's so different now than from 14 years ago? And I'm going to tell you this. I will say the age of young people entering into and experiencing a housing crisis is becoming extremely younger. When I say younger, it is extremely becoming younger. This is the first time, and I would say in like 14 years, where the number of young people who are coming through the doors are starting at 17, 18, needing a place to stay in order to complete high school. And we have not yet developed a system or a process to truly hone in on helping young people when they find themselves in that type of crisis to be somewhere safe and to graduate from high school. And that, if there's any challenge right now that's happening, that's one of the challenges that we have. It's our bridge housing that's located near USC. Literally, I could tell you this, more than 90% of the young people there are 18 years old. 90% of them, staff ensuring that they went to school, they got what they needed, make sure they were connected to a LACO homeless liaison so that they were able to graduate high school. And if you were to ask me, how did that happen? The majority of these young people lost their parents. They either lost their parents to COVID, they lost their parents to a heart attack, or their parents up and left, and they're pretty much too old to enter into any type of child welfare system. And so the housing that they need becomes critically important, and people like you become critically important. So I don't know how much time that I have, but I do want to say, I want to say thank you. And I know that we started off with honoring Reverend Lawson, but I wanted to share a quick story that I would love to close with about Reverend Lawson. And it's a good story because it was a good critique. And he, you know, for those of you who know that he really wanted you to learn something from him, he really wanted you to learn. So back in 2022, we took 10 young people to the South on a freedom ride that we had originally labeled a West to South human and civil rights movement. And our young people had an opportunity to engage with Reverend Lawson, as well as myself. And as we were talking about the trip and going forward with the trip and all these things that we had planned, he was like, you don't have it right. You're not getting it right. The word is not right. What we did was a human and civil rights encounter. Because when you're connecting with people and you're talking about social justice, and you're talking about the Voting Rights Act, we're talking about an encounter. And that's what these young people are going to have, is an encounter. And so we redesigned the trip based on his feedback and called it a freedom ride, a West to South human and civil rights encounter. And can I tell you this, when I say there's no place like Sanctuary of Hope? When we went to Lowndes County, Mississippi, and to Selma, not only was it a very unique encounter to have oral history taught to us by Annie Earl Avery, Denise Nash, but also other members of SNCC, but for them to reflect on having an encounter themselves with Reverend Lawson and what they taught them about voting rights and why the work they were doing was so necessary. And so this July, which is next month, our group is returning to Lowndes County to have an encounter again with human and civil rights, because our young people really need to know the strength of their power and how it all started with young people and a vision about a better tomorrow for themselves. And so I don't know how much time. Am I good? I need to open up the questions.
You're good.
Okay. I'm just going to tackle a couple other things as it relates to the housing crisis. You know, oftentimes when we talk about, and I'm just going to use the term because now we're in a very public setting, we don't have as many young people here, homelessness, we never talk about young people and their needs and what they want and how they want to interact and how they would like to see this, how they would love to see the system be kind of like responsive to their needs. Because from the last count, we have it estimated around 4,000 young people who were experiencing homelessness on any given night. And even out of that 4,000, you still have a balance of young people who are unaccompanied minors. Oftentimes their voice doesn't resonate to the table, and we haven't created systems to be responsive to their needs. But also we have, our young people who are between the ages of 18 and 25, where we have seen that the numbers have gone up in other areas, but not in South LA, right? But not in certain communities of SPA 8. And sometimes we never ask the question, why? Why is that? Well, the reason why is because a lot of the investments that have been centered around prevention have worked. When young people come through the doors, the first question you ask is, who's a part of your social network? Who's a part of your social capital? Where we can help you not only get connected, but help support them and you in your progress going forward. And so that has really been kind of the whole impetus around reducing those numbers, because we know that if we can help a young person deal with the issue with the dorm, right? Whether it's pay a fee where they're not going to be out of housing, or if they're struggling and it's just a matter of covering rent for a couple of months to keep them stably housed, or until they're able to secure a job, or help them to garner, right, or obtain a better wage, then their likelihood of stability becomes much better. And I say this mainly because almost 3 months ago, one of our young people returned to SOH. And he wanted to remind me that every time that I look at the SoFi Stadium, that I should see him, mainly because he was able to get into one of the jobs that was the trades. He was a re-entry young gentleman. And being able to see his work right there at the SoFi Stadium, and to remind me and everyone who's been a part of his stability and progress, and not to mention he drives a Hellcat, which that is a whole different story. But those are the things that we need, right, in order to really put a dent in not only the spigot of those entering into a housing crisis, but also to ensure that young people have the economic independence to withstand any life situation. And that's what this is about. How do we give you stamina, the fortitude to withstand any life situation? And so we've done extremely well. My peers have done extremely well, because when I say my peers, it's been a whole collectively, because we all kind of bounce across each other and find ways to help address kind of gaps. I always tell people, I hate when people say that folks don't work together, because that is absolutely not true. Well, I should say that's not been my experience in South LA. It's not been my experience in South LA. It's not been my experience in South Bay. Has not been my experience in Compton or the Antelope Valley. Because collectively, we know that we all can't do everything, but we all can fill in where we can. And so, I mean, it's one of those things where I've been very appreciative of just the partnership around helping our young people elevate. And elevation is far beyond, it's housing first, but it's housing first and it's housing first and then something else, right? And all of these connectivities, the connecting the dots is what helps our young people progress. When I say progress, progress forward. So I'm going to stop right there, because for those of you who want to know about SOH, you can visit the website, www.thesoh.org, find out kind of about everything that we're doing, because we do a whole lot. And when I say we do a whole lot, we really do to strengthen and bolster the resilience of young people. So how does that work, Rhea? Do we open this up or?
Well, first, I want to say thank you so much, Janet, to you, the Sanctuary of Hope team, everything you shared and all that you continue to do. Thank you just for being a beacon of amazingness and humanity. And then I would like to ask if it's okay to open it up to questions. Does anybody have any questions for Janet? LaTanya? Is that oh, just kidding.
No, I pushed the wrong thing.
No worries. Yes, Miss Joanne.
Hello, everybody. Hi, Miss Janet. She knows how I feel about her. She does amazing things, amazing things. Question. For the children who were orphaned by the COVID, were they able to access the funding that they had for children who had lost their parents during COVID?
So if they come by way of SOH, we make sure that they're able to tap into their survivor benefits. We're able to make sure that they tap into the survivor benefits. So when if their families have passed away, we work directly with them and Social Security to ensure that they get it.
Well, again, kudos for you. I like watching you guys travel around the world.
Thank you.
I'm so proud of you. Thank you for all you do.
Thank you.
Miss
And I-
Reba?
Oh, let Alexis go, and I'll go last.
Okay.
Thank you. I'll lower my hand.
Okay.
You, Janet, just wanted to ask you in this space because I never got to ask in our other meetings. Work is around now is kind of transitioning with a little, well, not a little bit, but lived experience and more so workforce development. So are there any pathways for the children that you serve or youth that you work with who come through your program? Is there some kind of pipeline back to working with SOH, and how does that work?
Absolutely. So if any of you have had an encounter with Maria at SOH, she is actually one of the first young people who came through our doors, and she works as our resource coordinator. But we've hired young people in the past. I mean, you will see them whether they're as resource coordinators or they're part of our street outreach engagement team. I probably didn't mention that, but I should have told you all this. But sometimes you guys may see some young people and adults that are on the metro line or at the parks or at the bus, and you see that they're out there and they're talking and engaging with people, and then on a back of a shirt it says "Ask me how" or "Ask me what." It's them literally going directly to young people on the streets, on metro, where they tend to congregate, to have a discussion around how they could help them get back on their feet, especially during the summertime, which oftentimes is a traumatic time for us here at SOH and for most youth serving organizations because of what normally happens during the summer. But yes, we have young people who do that. And I think I mentioned that we have a young adult action board and a young action leadership. And they play a role in as far as helping to inform and design programs, but they also curate a lot of the events that you see that SOH has had. That's why when I said I thank you all for showing up, our Homeless Youth Awareness Month, everything that's centered around that month is curated by our young people. So from the planning to who shows up, who's going to be the speakers, it's all them. So it's very youth-centered and it's very, their lived expertise is branded everywhere.
Thank you.
Thanks, Janet. Anya?
Yes, thank you, Janet, for sharing about Sanctuary of Hope. This is my first introduction to the organization, and I'm really excited about all that you've been doing and definitely want to learn more. One of the things you shared some success stories, and I'm just curious where, how do you publish those success stories and how do you, get the word out about what you're doing? Let me just preface this by saying I'm fairly recently returning to LA. I've been away from LA for a long time. So this organization may be very, very well known, but those success stories are huge. And I'm just curious how you get that message out there.
Great. So either by way of the website or on our social media channels, which is for Instagram and Facebook at Sanctuary of Hope LA, or on formerly Twitter, now X, _SOH _LA, but nobody's on that platform. So Instagram and Facebook, you'll be able to see all of the wonderful successes that we have.
Right.
And we'll continue to have.
And just a follow up to that, for how do you utilize your volunteers? Like, what's the pathway to, becoming involved?
So I'll say it depends, because for some, depending on what the volunteer involvement is, we have requirements for background screening and all that other stuff. If it's something outside of kind of like a regular, but it's kind of like a one-off, we need volunteers for a lot of things, whether it's volunteering for helping us plan events, volunteering for to create some welcome home baskets, volunteering for, oh my God, we need volunteers who will come in for our Mantuary to speak once a month, every fourth Thursday of the month. We have what's called the Mantuary. It's an intergenerational safe space for young men and men alike to come and have conversations about things that matter to them. And so we always need volunteers to either teach a course in financial literacy. We even had volunteers who came in to teach a course about hair care. And so there's many opportunities to volunteer.
Got it. Okay, sounds good. I'll just reach out via the website. Thank you.
Yeah, reach out.
Thank you. And I love, that was also a beautiful example of bridge building. So thank you, Anya and Janet. Coach Ron?
Hey, Janet, do you guys got any openings currently?
Yes, there are openings. You can visit the website. It's under the employment link. So if you go to the
No, not employment for the residents, for the youth. You guys got any bed space open?
I don't have any bed space open, not as of right now.
Okay, thank you. Because I know there's so many kids that's in Skid Row. They need some places to go. So I wanted to refer them, but if you don't have no openings, I won't.
No, I don't have any openings, but they may be now, not just SOH, but remember, we have a whole continuum. continuous throughout Los Angeles County. So just because we may not have a bed space, this is where CES is important, right? Because when young people are facing a challenge, and mindfully too, there's just not enough beds in LA County for the number of young people who may be facing a crisis. But if we could determine if any of those young people can get connected to a resource that can move them into a time-limited subsidy and think outside the box to think about their long-term stability, then let's have a conversation. Let's have a conversation, or send them over to WACAC and watch. Shannon just posted. So we're all connected in one way or another. So just make the introduction and make the connection, and we'll go from there, because that's what this is all about, being interconnected in the work.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for highlighting the importance of collaboration and community. So, Carmen. Oh, Carmen, you're muted.
Hi, Janet. We go
Hey.
we go way back.
Yes, we do.
I can
way back.
testify that it's a fine organization. My Multicultural Real Estate Alliance has been working with her for years. The last time we talked, you said you needed another house. You still need of that?
Yes, we're still looking. Yeah, we're still looking, because the other place that we have, yes, we're looking.
What are the physical parameters?
We'll talk offline about that.
Okay.
Thank you. Janice?
Hi, Janet. Always good to
Hey.
see you. I'm always inspired by your work, and I so want to take those trips with you and the members of Sanctuary of Hope. I'm just always excited when you take a trip. Just a quick question. I'm wondering if you have a process that allows you to track the youth when they exit out of Sanctuary of Hope and go on to do great things. I don't know if you stay connected. I'm just curious if you're able to continue with them in some kind of way.
Yes, so what we have aftercare services where young people can access resources up until the age of 25. And some of our resources they can access up to the age of 27 because it's funded by the state. But yes, we have a way in which at the time of exit, we're able to track, or we know, well, I should say we're not even tracking. We know where they're going. That's the one thing for sure. We know where they're going. But we always have engagement opportunities where we're constantly staying connected with them. I mean, whether it's, if they come through our housing program, they're involved in our leadership development. If they're involved in our leadership development, they're constantly, connected to a lot of opportunities in which they can stay connected and engaged with us. And so because of the fact that we do have aftercare services, just to give an example, we had one of our young people who lost a job, needed to have eviction prevention assistance. They were able to come back to say, hey, I lost my job. I'm trying to get rapidly reemployed again, reconnected. I need help paying my rent for the next 2 months because I think I could find a job within 60 days. We have a resource for that because that's a part of our aftercare service. Or they may have stopped therapeutic services, but then all of a sudden life happens and they're in a rut and they need to resolve issues around their mental or emotional safety. And so because we know that mental and emotional safety is really important for young people between that 16 to 25 years of age, they can always come back and meet with our therapist, Gail, just to ensure that they're well and that they're practicing well-being.
Thank
So
you.
yes.
Thank you.
And last question, Janet, thank you for, I know we've taken up a lot of your time, so, and we appreciate all the time you share. Miss Reba?
Well, thank you so very, very much, Janet Kelly. But I think I need to also thank Empowerment Congress for shining a bright light on Sanctuary of Hope, an organization that I strongly believe. I believe in your work, Janet Kelly, because I have witnessed things in which you didn't talk about. Like, for instance, when a young person who was on someone's care load versus case, who died, and what that experience was like, or when that parent of that young person passed, and to see that wraparound love and the unity um, of Sanctuary of Hope is really inspiring. And I know that's a down, but it's a reality that happens, and to witness it is something to actually experience. So thank you for that. But I have several questions real quickly. I know we're short on time. One is about, as a community advocate and in so many different spaces and seated at so many tables, it's always important for community to understand how those additional programs, if you will, that you're offering to our young people are funded. Because I'm certain that the system, as we know it, does not contribute. Could you respond to that?
So many of our other programs that we do to support our young people are not supported by government, but it's supported by philanthropy and individual donors who give. For example, our Destinations program that takes young people on international and national travel to learn how to not only be global citizens, for racial and social justice equity champions, right? So that's primarily supported by private dollars, because it's part of the reason why many of them have visited almost 3 different continents, been able to engage in humanitarian efforts, whether it was providing water to the individuals in Jackson, Mississippi. They literally did almost no more than, I think it was close to 3,000 pounds of water that they got over to Jackson, Mississippi. He sent over 300 pounds of medical supplies to Cuba, delivered over 200 pounds of backpacks and school supplies to Johannesburg, South Africa. So a lot of the work that we do, that type of work, and the work that we do even in partnership with the Diley Institute around civic engagement and creating civic leaders that you see in our spaces are funded by private dollars that we raise. And so, and that's important because our systems aren't really designed around what I call the excellence of cultural because in order to get there, you have to have these forms of rites of passage programs in order to build a bench of leadership that's going to be, well, not going to be the next Reverend Lawson, but will follow behind Reverend Lawson as social change, social justice leaders.
You answered that so perfectly, and I'll end by asking you, what is it that we as a community can do to support the excellence that you are providing to our young people? And I also want to compliment you for positioning them to pay it forward and to dismantle that welfare mentality that our system actually provides. So what can we do to help you? But, can you give us a link where we can, we know about the background check, but what can we do to help you financially? How can we support?
So I just invest in the work, invest in the things that we know government is not going to pay for. I mean, I can tell you your dollar goes a long way. Because when I say that there are times that young people who are coming in and they're experiencing a crisis in many ways, whether they are victims of gun violence, which is when I talked about when the summertime is here, all of our radars go up, because year before last was the worst year for us, where we had 3 young people who were victims of gun violence, and they were all women, which is not normal. And so, you know, just to be able to kind of invest in that work, to be a response, especially to victims, especially when they need something right now, as opposed to waiting for later, all of those things. So just being able to invest, and you can do that directly on the website, www.thesoh.org, and by clicking on the button. So give up your time, give up your money, just give.
And we'll share our prayers too.
And share your prayers. And if you are a man, I invite you to come to the Mantuary, which is on the 3rd Thursday of the month.
Okay, and Janet, if you'd like to email us information about that, we'll email it to the Homelessness or Empowerment Congress Homelessness Working Group as well.
Okay, yeah, I will do so, because I really think it's very important. And I was sharing this with someone today. A lot of times when we talk about homelessness, the housing crisis, don't talk about young men. And
Yeah.
it's the same thing in child welfare. You see all other needs, but not their needs. So this gives them the opportunity to have a window to the forefront.
Okay.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you again. Thank you so much for joining us and for all that you do. We really appreciate it. Excuse me. I have 2 announcements. The first one is that our next meeting is going to be June 24th, and we are hoping that to confirm that Dr. Ryan Smith from St. Joseph Center will be joining us. So please check your emails for that one, and please make sure to register. In addition, we have our Empowerment Congress Juneteenth event coming up on June 22nd. So that is going to be the Saturday before our next meeting. And during this year's Juneteenth event, we're going to be addressing the intersect of environmental and social equity. And so we're looking at pursuing climate justice through community participation. I'm going to drop the link to where you can register for the event. It's on our Empowerment Congress website. And before we adjourn tonight, I think we have a special treat and a closing note from our founder. So I'm going to pass it over to Supervisor MRT.
Thanks very much, Rhea, and thank you for your constancy, your leadership for the working group. Shout out to Janet for her presentation. If you can contextualize it, I think it would be good to say the following. A lot's going on in the homeless space, but significantly it is viewed from the vantage point of what isn't happening and how challenging it is to be a part of moving things forward. And while I am among those who would lend my voice to that critique, I would offer the presentation tonight as an example of what can be done rather than what can't be done or isn't being done. If you want to motivate someone, it needs to be from the vantage point of that which is positive, not from the vantage point of woe is me. And so I think all of us get that. And the presentation we've heard tonight, I think, puts a capital S on service, on capital I on investment. And so the investment goes to the human infrastructure of our community. And not only that, but to look into the future and see young people as the asset that we must embrace. And so I want to say that this is a hopeful presentation, and not a hopeful presentation that is simply connected to rose-colored lenses, but where people are rolling up their sleeves and putting a shoulder to the wheel and leaning in and getting it done. And so we owe you a lot of respect, a lot of accolade, a lot of dap for what you're doing and how you're doing. We know it ain't easy. We know it ain't perfect. We do know it's real. And further, it's inspiring. I can close on this note that it makes this more accessible. I think my work has largely been connected to systems change and the policy aspects that inform the crisis, and those things are fundamentally important. But I want to say that everyday people, ordinary citizens, need to know how they can get in wherever they fit in, and be able to touch this and feel good about having made that contribution. Not everybody's going to be able to understand the multi-billion-dollar budgets that are in play around homelessness at the city, county, state, and federal levels, but they can understand what it means to show up at a venue and make a difference that is accountable, a difference that is hopeful, a difference that's making a difference in the lives of individuals one at a time, and sometimes more. And so I just simply want to say thank you. Keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you, Supervisor.
Mhm.
Thank you so much. With that, we will close our meeting. Thank you again to everybody for joining. Thank you, Janet. And we will see you for our next meeting on Thursday, June 27th. Thank you.
Good night, all.
Good night.
Happy Father's Day to any dads on
Good
the
night.
call.
Happy Father's Day.
Happy
Yeah,
Father's
happy
Day.
Father's Day.
Thank you very much. Yeah. Yeah.
Peace and blessings, you guys.
Good night.
Happy Father's Day.